I'm considering having a personal brand. I don't know if I'm ready for a personal brand. You have one. You had one this morning when you woke up. A personal brand is just your reputation. So anytime you walk into a room, people think things about you. The question is, what do they think?
Welcome, everybody, back into the Dynamis studio this week. We are interviewing a really interesting individual by the name of Bob Wheatley. I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this week, especially if you're an entrepreneur, aspiring author, anybody who's just trying to better your life and get some brand recognition and get to the next level. Bob is here helping us all believe the impossible within ourselves. Bob is a USC graduate, a podcast host, a radio co-host focusing on singles ministry, a former professional baseball player, and a recently published author. I can't wait to get into this discussion. Bob, thank you for joining us today on the Dynamis podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to this.
I want to jump into your journey. There was a period in your life where you were working as a professional baseball player. You played for the Toronto Blue Jays, and you mentioned to me that you were also running a business out of the back of your team bus, sending emails and making sure that orders were fulfilled. Why were you doing that, first of all? And what was it inside you that felt like, man, I'm not doing enough as a professional athlete at the pinnacle of this sport that I've worked probably my whole life to get to? Let's add a business on top of that.
Yeah, so I grew up with an entrepreneurial mindset just because that's the home that I grew up in. My dad is a serial entrepreneur. He's an attorney by trade, but he's always had multiple other businesses and real estate investments and things like that. And so that's the influence that I grew up around. I went to USC, University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and I was a business major there. And so this business, this protein bar business, it actually started before I was a professional athlete. It was more of a class project almost. We took upper level entrepreneurship class, and for 4 months, that fall semester is basically start a business on paper. And so I was like, all right, I'm an athlete. I know a little bit about nutrition. I care a lot about it. Let's start a protein bar business on paper and see what happens. And as I did more and more research, I was like, okay, I could actually see myself doing this. Like, I'm actually passionate about it. The product that I've devised would be really interesting, and ended up graduating, got drafted by the Blue Jays and started playing professionally. And you asked, how did that happen? Why did that happen? I was not like a Clayton Kershaw type of prospect. Like, I did not sign for $1 million. I was not a first rounder. I was a 26 rounder. I was number 774 overall. So when the Blue Jays paid me $1,000, you start looking at plan B, even when you're still right in the meat of plan A. So that's why that business came about, because I was like, all right, even if I make it to the big leagues, not going to play there forever. And the odds of getting to the big leagues are so long, I might as well start making things happen, because you can't have a full-time job playing pro sports. You can't even have a part-time job really, because you're on the road so much. But if you're an entrepreneur, you can run your business. So I was running this protein bar business for 2-3 years maybe. And I had my hotspot and laptop in the back of the bus and doing the best I can. And it wasn't the traditional entrepreneurial hustle where you're literally knocking on doors and trying to make things happen. But slowly but surely, I was planting seeds around that business to see, all right, does this thing have the legs? I was trying to see if there was something there.
Were you an anomaly? Like, how many other people were doing what you were doing, playing baseball at the same time? Were there other teammates that had similar interests, or were you kind of an outlier?
I'd say I was an outlier in that regard. There wasn't a ton of people that were actively running businesses while it happened, but there was a handful of different types of ball players. There was the first round draft pick signed for $1 million. And then there was also the senior sign, college educated. He has his degree and he'll probably be here for 24 months and then go start a business or go back to his hometown and get into insurance or something like that. There was that group as well. I was much more of the latter between the two. Now, I wanted to be the best baseball player I possibly could because I knew there was a limited window. You can get into insurance at 20, 30, 40, 50, it doesn't matter. You're not going to play in the big leagues at 50. So I did want to be focused on baseball. That was absolutely my number one. But in the downtime, which in baseball, I mean, we say it all the time, hurry up and wait. There's so much downtime in baseball. You get to choose what you do with that time. It could be playing cards in the clubhouse. It could be chasing women. I certainly wasn't in love with the last part, but I wanted to advance my life. I wanted to read. I wanted to do the best I could. And again, growing up in an entrepreneur's house, studying business in college, knowing that my, 87 to 90 mile an hour fastball isn't really wowing the scouts in the stands. Like, man, you better get something going. You better have plan B.
That's incredibly thoughtful. And I think there's probably a lot of people who don't have that awareness who get into trouble post baseball or post, sport, because they just have no succession planning in place at all.
Well, and I hear you on that. I was aware of that. And again, baseball, you have a limited window. So like if I could paint a word picture for you, I'm sure you've seen it in different illustrations. You kind of have like the cascading buckets of water, like a water fountain, right? You fill up the top bucket and then it spills over into the next one. The next one fills up and then it continues to cascade. Baseball was my top bucket. Like I was not giving anything to my business unless baseball was full. I was living in Orange County, California. It's where I grew up, but every off season I'd go and live in New Orleans. So I'm 2,000 miles away from family, friends, really away from my life, just training because I was a professional baseball player. I want to give this everything I have. I'm at the gym 8 hours a day. I sleep for another 8 and there's 8 other hours. So it's like, all right, do I watch movies? Do I scroll Instagram? Do I just kind of mess around? Or do I read? Do I get better? Do I run this business? So I was sacrificing the things that might have been easier or more pleasurable or something. And I had plenty of downtime. Like I certainly enjoyed myself. You definitely need that for sure. But if there was anything that I was sacrificing, it was the night out on the town, not the time in the gym.
You said something that I just want to pull back out. It highlights your capacity to be forward thinking, to be focused on delayed gratification, and your ability to have a higher sense of emotional intelligence and awareness, which is probably what drives you forward and makes you successful. But you said you had a small window, right? There's this concept of knowing how to manage your time appropriately. And there are things in life that have to be executed on rapidly, very quickly, while there are other times, there are other things that can be circled back to later in life. It's knowing when to hurry and what things can wait, and then prioritizing them in a proper workflow to get the highest return. Not a lot of young men have that rank order properly categorized. I think that speaks to you and your character and your awareness and where you are today. And it sounds like it's a characteristic trait that you've had instilled in you from outside forces. It's something that's extremely powerful to have, and I no doubt that you leverage it today.
First of all, thank you for saying that. Second of all, I'd say I've just been coached well. I literally just got off a call with a gentleman. He's a best-selling author in Latin America. So he's looking at book number 2, and he's like, I think what I want to do now is I want to translate my book from Spanish to English before we do any sort of rebranding or, updates to the website or whatever it might be. And what I cautioned him is, hey, first of all, we can absolutely do that. It's not going to be the end of the world if you translate a book from Spanish to English. But I will say, what happens if we end up changing something within the Spanish book? Then all of a sudden, those 2 or 3 months that you've been translating the book into English, it's kind of a moot point. Like you've been translating words that you end up erasing. So your thinking is right. You're doing the right thing at the wrong time. Entrepreneurs often know what to do. They just do it in the wrong order. It's the company that, oh man, I'm super excited, back of the napkin, let's launch this business. And then you're buying Facebook ads the next day. It's like, nope, that is not right. That is not. It's like, oh, well, it's just $10. Well, if only 2 of those dollars is going to the right person, why are you in the business of wasting $8 a day? That adds up. That's bad business. It's $2,500 a year that you're saying like, oh, whatever. right?
Yeah.
So you're doing the right thing. You know, hey, I should probably market my business. But what you haven't discovered is, what is your business? Who
Right.
are you?
Right.
Who are you
Yeah.
serving? What
Yeah.
problem do you solve for them? And you could take this course on how to blow up on Facebook or what hashtags to use on Instagram. It's like, it does not matter until you know what your business is. So you're doing the right thing at the wrong time. And again, I just go back to, I'm going to receive your compliment. I appreciate that, but I've just been coached well. That's all it is. Like, I didn't discover this. I had people wiser than I am tell me, hey, stop doing the right thing at the wrong time. Like, this is the order you do it.
Look, you're not going to clean the toilet after you take a shower. You're going to clean the toilet first, and then you're going to take a shower, right? And we can visualize why. This is an excellent segue into something that I would be really interested in diving into. You represent an organization called Brand Builders, and I would love if you just gave a quick summary of what it is Brand Builders is about and what you in particular do there.
Brand Builders is a brand strategy firm. As far as what I do there, it's kind of a twofold answer that I have to give. I actually started as a Brand Builders client. I wrote a book over the course of the pandemic. It was just a 50,000 word document on my computer. It was not a book. It was just a really long essay, essentially. And I needed a partner to help me make it into a book. It's like, I have no idea how to get this thing to the market. What Brand Builders does, we set up free 60-minute coaching calls for anybody. We help a number of high profile celebrity type authors, speakers, coaches. We did Ed Mylett's book launch last summer. We've worked with Lewis Howes on 3 or 4 of his books. We worked with Eric Thomas, E.T. the hip hop preacher, Peter Diamandis. We have 12 best-selling authors, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and we're founded by Rory Vaden, who himself is a New York Times bestseller and a Hall of Fame speaker. We work with the solopreneur, because a personal brand, sometimes people get that kind of misconstrued. They hear branding or personal branding. They're like, oh, well, that's like colors and slogans, and they're going to change my website from purple to blue, and that's going to blow up my business. That is a fraction of what a personal brand is. Really, what a personal brand is your reputation. A lot of people call in all the time like, well, I'm considering having a personal brand. I don't know if I'm ready for a personal brand. It's like, no, man, you have one. You have one today. You had one this morning when you woke up. A personal brand is just your reputation. So anytime you walk into a room, people think things about you. The question is, what do they think? Whatever the answer to that question is, that is your personal brand. So it's either big or small, it's good or bad, but you have a personal brand. So what Brand Builders does is we help to strategically govern or roll out what that reputation is. It's like, what are you great at? What do you want to be known for? And is it working? You don't want to be the best kept secret in your town, in your industry.
Obviously, the world is changing. Marketing is changing. Branding is changing. And we're in this really cool era of access, right? There used to be these gatekeepers. All of a sudden, we wake up in 2023 and the world's different, and anybody can build a brand. Anybody can get access. Anybody can cut out the middleman. And so my question for you is, why is this such a powerful and important investment for entrepreneurs?
It's just the world we live in now. Like, if we think about your parents, if we think about your grandparents, they grew up in a world where companies were the things that people trusted. It was Coca-Cola. It was Chevy. It was, I'm an IBMer. That is not the case anymore. And you might still trust Coca-Cola or different stuff like that, but we specifically trust people. We at Brand Builders, we actually did a national study to really verify what we had beliefs that personal branding was kind of the way of the future, but we wanted to see what are Americans actually saying? Like, what do Americans say to Tim's question? And what we found, first of all, 74% of Americans say they care about whether or not you have a personal brand. 74%. So like 3 out of 4 people care whether or not you have one. So if you're saying like, Instagram's kind of a time suck, I've had an account for 12 years, but it hasn't really gone anywhere. Well, 3 out of 4 people care about whatever you're putting on there or not.
Yeah.
That's an important conversation. 82% of people, going back to the companies, 82% of people say they care about executives of a company having a personal brand. So
Wow.
when it comes to executives of a business, even that, like your business, let's say it's a Fortune 500 or whatever, that is not a big enough thing for you to hide behind. Today's consumer is saying like, no, I care about the person. I care about the person who's behind that company.
Look, you could take great pictures and have a great website, but if your fulfillment sucks, your customer service sucks, that's your brand.
58% of people have said, I will pay more money if you have a personal brand. So 3 out of 4 people want you to have it. The majority, more than 50% of people say, I will pay you more. And why is that? People do business with those that they know, like, and trust. If they know you,
absolutely.
If they trust you, they're like, yeah, I mean, this is more than I expected, but you seem legit. And I was referred to you by a friend and your reputation is stellar. Yes.
Yeah.
Versus the person who doesn't have any sort of online presence, that's a reputation thing. Even just looking at social media, where Instagram for a long time, it was just still shots. Then you had Instagram Live and stuff like that. Now it is not the place where you say, hey, we're in Cabo. You might see some of that, but like if you go on the Discover page, it's how-tos, it's quick tips. People are running businesses there because everybody's looking for an expert.
So how much of Brand Builder's focus is on social media?
Yeah, it's a good question, because sometimes that's a common misconception when you might hear personal branding and you think like, oh, social media, like that's the only thing. That's not true. Social media is a part of it. And, I'm fortunate enough to sit down with a lot of people in different industries to help them with their respective business. And I remember one story specifically. This is a gentleman who we got connected to him through Ed Mylett. He was working in finance. He had built up his Instagram account to 40,000 followers over a couple of years, like an awesome following. And he ended up getting hacked. So, you do the Instagram notifications, whatever, you reach out to their help center. Hey, got hacked. I need you to shut this down. So they shut down his account. They weren't able to revive it. And then every time that he tried to create a new Instagram, again, same face, same name, they thought he was the hacker. So this guy went from 40,000 Instagram followers to 0 to almost worse than 0, because now he can't even use Instagram as a platform. Like they always think he's the bad guy. So we use that as kind of a cautionary tale in that if you think your business lives on social media, it does not. That is truly rented ground. Your idea, what you should be doing and what we coach our clients is to get those people who still love you, get them off of social media, get them onto your email list, get them onto your blog, onto your website where you own them. Because it could be something like that where it's totally outside of his control. Or again, I go back to the cancel culture. It's somewhat within your control as far as what you tweet and things that you say and don't say. But at the end of the day, if these social media platforms don't like you, they can cancel you. It's a private business. You could be Jordan Peterson, you could be Elon Musk, you could be Donald Trump, and a bunch of others, but like those are 3 of the biggest. You tweet the wrong thing, you're canceled. So that becomes a problem if you haven't created contingencies, if you don't have the strategy to say, all right, my business is not my Instagram account. My Instagram account is a lead driver to my business. You need to have it elsewhere in real estate that you own.
Would you think of Brand Builders as a coaching organization? They're helping you organize your priorities of work, take a holistic look at your brand. Is that what Brand Builders does?
100%. Yeah, we're kind of the coaches of coaches. 60% of our clients are authors, speakers, coaches, or consultants. Basically, if you have some sort of message to get to the world, we can help you get it to the world. We're the long-term coach. Like we work with our clients for literally years at a time. It's not like a short sprint. We help people build businesses.
As the entrepreneur, I don't want to figure out all of these systems and what I need to do next. I just want to focus on my superpower. I want to identify like, what am I actually good at? What value am I bringing? My value is I energize people. I supercharge their belief. I help them get to the next level. I let them be a part of something that's going to deliver freedom, financial freedom, lifestyle freedom. I pour into people and make them believe in themselves to get to the next level. Okay, great. What the hell do I know about email lists, or am I doing the correct thing on social media? I don't want to sit and think about all these things. I just want to pour all of my energy into what my superpower is. Here's a perfect example. I have a goal this year where I want to speak in front of 2 to 3 audiences, at least 600 people or more. Would you say to me, well, what do you want to speak about? Because then my next question would be like, I have no idea, but I just feel like I want to get up on stage. I want to deliver a keynote. What advice would you give to me if I was working with brand builders and I came to you with that kind of a goal?
The first question that I would have for you is, okay, sounds like an awesome goal. That'd be really cool, potentially. Why is that important to you? Why 600 people? Why speaking at all? Just help me to understand where you're coming from. And again, we might stick with that goal. That you might have hit the nail on the head bullseye on that thing. But again, as the coaches of coaches, we're saying, all right, great. How did you come to that conclusion? How do you believe that's going to help your business? And it might absolutely help your business. We have an aspect of our methodology. It's called full keynote calendar. That's all things public speaking. It's sizzle reel. It's media kit. It's conferences, trade shows. What is your speaking fee? Are you a $3,000 speaker or are you a $10,000 speaker? When you speak in front of those 600 people, are you going to speak for free and sell in the back of the room? Are you going to speak for free and just ask for the video and basically you get a free sizzle reel? You get an hour of content with their super HD videos, a bunch of different angles. That is a totally viable thing. But again, that's just a small piece of your business. I shared the name Ed Mylett. We did his book launch last summer, The Power of One More. He pre-sold 117,000 copies of that book. He's literally the #1 best-selling book in the world. He has an amazing platform. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've probably heard of Ed Mylett, or maybe even you're probably listening to his podcast. So he does a lot of things well. He's a podcaster, he's a speaker, massive email list. And so what brand builders did, we don't just jump in and say, hey, like we can really sell a lot of books. It's okay, knowing what's at your disposal, knowing all of these different aspects, let's get creative with this thing. So we did a series of different speaking events. He did a huge online summit called Max Out Live. He literally sold 35,000 books in one day doing that strategy. So it's just understanding, again, I go back to the word that you used, holistic. It's not that all of our clients have all of those things. We have plenty of clients who don't have a podcast. But where we find issues is sometimes people have siloed coaches. You have a social media coach, you have a podcast coach, I have a funnels coach, and they never talk. So you become an expert in all things social media, podcasts, and funnels, but then it's up to you to be the quarterback to make sure everything is, this dance is flowing. Like you just said it, that is not my circle of genius, right? So you're kind of stepping out of what you're best at, saying like, oh, well, I guess I'm the quarterback of this brand. I got to make sure that all of these different methodologies work together. Brand builders is kind of like the master coach that allows our clients to be the visionary.
So you guys are coaching affiliate relationship. Let's just say an example of email lists, right? Let's just say, hey, I know I need to capture my emails. I have no idea how to organize my emails, how to connect with the people on my email list. What system should I use to capture them? I come to brand builders and you guys are coaching me and helping me set all of this up. Is that correct?
Yes. And that's why we work with our clients, not for 3 weeks, but 3 years. Building a business, creating a business does not happen overnight. Even if you have that $1 million idea, you need the $1 million plan. You need the $1 million execution. And there's a ton of stuff. There's so much stuff. Like you might be the one-on-one coach. You might be the podcaster. You might have a book in you. You might be all of the above. The more things you do, that just becomes a more complicated enterprise.
Does brand builders have the ability to say, hey, Tim, I see you're doing this podcast thing. I know you did a speaking event last year that went really well. You're thinking about this XYZ launch. What we think that you really need to do is, instead of doing this, maybe you should write this book on this particular thing this year. We think this is your highest form of leverage. Is that the type of coaching? there's oftentimes I get into cycles where I have blind spots and I can't identify them. Like maybe there's this really easy low hanging fruit that I need to attack, but I'm focused on, point A to point B, and I need brand builders to come in and say, no, we will get to brand B, but I know you weren't thinking about a book. I think you need to think about a book, and here's who I'm going to put in your life to help you get this done.
100%. And it goes back to the conversation we were having as far as doing the right things at the wrong time. What we always have our clients do at the very beginning, we call it finding your brand DNA. One thing that we put out a bunch is you need to find your uniqueness and exploit it in the service of others. So you could be the best podcaster in the world. You could have the latest and greatest microphone. You could have all your funnels dialed in. If you don't know what your uniqueness is, doesn't matter. Lewis Howes, he was literally client number one for Brand Builders Group. At that time, Lewis had 17 revenue streams. And he had an awesome podcast. He was at like 50 million downloads, something like that. But again, 17 revenue streams. So on the surface, you might say, oh, that's an awesome business. Like clearly he must be doing great. He was drowning. So sits down with Rory. It was a finding your brand DNA session. Like, what am I actually about? I kind of need to, blow this thing up and rebuild it. I need to shuffle the deck here and see what I really want to do. Coming out of those 2 days, he discovered the podcast is the thing. I love the podcast. So it went from kind of a lead driver, like just one of the 17, to the thing. His podcast went from 50 million to 500 million because he had gotten diluted. He was operating outside of his genius. To answer your question, as far as can we be that sounding board? Can we be the accountability partner to say, hey, I don't think the book is the thing. We can absolutely do that, but it's more of helping you discover that. Like you have the answers, right? We're just a sounding board. And there's 6 different questions that we ask our clients to help them discover what that brand DNA is. But again, it's essentially, who are you? Who do you serve? What problem do you solve for them? All of our clients, and we have about 600 today, they all have a 1-word problem. So they've literally narrowed down what they do for the world to 1 word. That specificity, it forces you to be crystal clear on what you're doing. We'll take Lewis. Lewis, after that brand DNA session, his 1-word problem that he's solving for the world is doubt. He hates it. It breaks his heart when people doubt themselves. So he knows every podcast episode, every speech from stage, every word of a book that he writes, the person that he is best suited to serve is doubting the people around them, doubting themselves. So by having that clarity, that allows all of his stuff downstream, from a long form book to a social media post on a Tuesday. All of a sudden you wake up and you're about something, and then your podcast goes to 500 million. It's the clarity.
Let's talk about social proof. I know there's metrics. I know you guys are measuring. So people that come to you year 1 versus year 4 or 5, what are we seeing?
It's tough for me to answer that question in broad strokes just because we have so many different types of clients.
Yeah.
If the question is, how many people succeed? Well, we have to define what success would be, because we have some people, we teach a course, it's called 8-Figure Entrepreneur. Like if you're making $10 million a year, what do you need to know within your business? The operational changes around that, human resources and taxes and stuff like that. Dave Ramsey, 9-Figure Entrepreneur, right? We'll also have people who maybe they want to phase out their day job. They're kind of in like on the back 9 of their career. They're like, hey, I want to build something awesome. It's a passion project right now, but I'd like to just replace my $150,000 a year income to where I could become my own boss. So it just depends on how we define success in that regard. But again, where people are usually struggling, the people that come to us, is they're kind of spinning their wheels. We have a concept called Sheehan's Wall. Sheehan's Wall. It's named after Peter Sheehan. He's just a friend of the company. And with Sheehan's Wall, just to like paint a word picture, in any industry, whether it's real estate or financial planning or whatever it might be, podcasting, there's a wall. There's 2 groups of people on either side of that wall. On one side, you have those that haven't made it, that are trying to break through the wall. And on the other side, you have the people that have made it. So you have Lewis Howes, Ed Mylett, Oprah Winfrey. They've made it, right? Usually what people try to do to break through the wall is they try a bunch of different things. So like if you envision you have a brick wall in front of you and you have a sledgehammer, you smack one brick as hard as you can, like, oh, I really tried, and it doesn't work, and then you move on. You try another brick and another brick and another brick, or even worse, you try a bunch at the same time, if that's even possible. And then you get frustrated. You're like, man, I guess I'm just somebody who's not made to break through walls. I guess I just can't do it. What we teach and what we encourage our clients to understand is like, no, you need to pick one brick and hammer it. You need to get awesome at that one thing. And then there's going to be a little crack in the wall. You keep hammering it and you'll be able to peek your eyes through. And then over time, you'll be able to break through that wall. And the way that you know if you've broken through the wall or not, on the side where you feel like you're pushing, you haven't yet broken through, everything is, like I said, it's a push. It's man, okay, I got to cold call people. I got to set up the networking emails. Like I need to generate this thing. Whereas on the other side, if you have made it, if you're Lewis Howes, if you're Oprah, stuff comes to you. Stuff comes to you. You're now in the yes and no business. And it's still like equally taxing, but it's just in a different way. You don't have to generate everything. You just have to sift. You have to make wise decisions. It's you're now the magnet versus the mule that's just driving everything. So yeah, it's again, there's no magic potion. There's no silver bullet to make a business work. It's just hard work and mentors, good information, right? Tell me what to do and then execute well. That's it. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that analogy and the metaphor that you just used. The imagery is really powerful. And, I'm envisioning, I'm like hitting this brick wall and what does it feel like before I've broken through? And I'm trying to visualize what does it feel like after? And, some of the things that you're saying right now are resonating. I started building a brand about a year ago with no background in doing so, no understanding, no idea. I just made a commitment. I'm just going to do this thing every single day. I'm going to be consistent. And I've been incredibly consistent with brand building. Now, when I'm talking to you, I'm realizing, wow, there's a ton of holes in my brand that I need to reassess and redirect. But this crazy thing has started to happen. For a year, I've just been doing the thing. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, recently, I felt this momentum where I was pedaling uphill. And now all of a sudden, in the last couple of weeks, it's like, oh, I'm kind of on a downhill grade. I'm not coasting. I'm still pedaling, but I can feel there's less resistance. And it's 100% coming from the brand. People are contacting me because of the brand.
Yep.
They want to talk to me because of the brand, because of the YouTube, because of the podcast, because of the social media. And I can just see the infinite return on investment that this is going to be in the future. And talking to you is making me think I really need to start reassessing my brand and figuring out how to partner with people like brand builders who are very strategic and helping me just focus on my genius and let you guys be the integrators. And I can see this is the future. A lot of people that listen to this show are in mixed areas of life. We have some people who are very successful, have very well-established brands who are getting it done. And we also have people who are just getting started. I want to speak to that audience before we move on. Do you have any insight or suggestions for people who are pounding the wall, who don't really have the income to invest yet in something as holistic and strategic? What advice would you give somebody to starting a brand on their own? Let's say it's day one, no resources to do so.
We always say you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. You could help the you of yesterday, where, think about you, Tim, you just said, I feel the momentum coming. You've learned a lot over the last 12 months to where if you were able to speak to yourself, kind of go back in time, you might have done some things a little different. It sounds like you've done a lot of things well, but you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. If you're starting off, maybe you're even just thinking about starting a personal brand, which again, that's everybody has one, but we're turning it into a business. We're monetizing your reputation. I guess that first question is, who is the person you once were? What lessons have you learned? Where have you been heartbroken? Where have you been betrayed? What have you studied? What are you an expert on? What are you most interested in? These are all things that you have a very unique DNA. You have a very unique fingerprint in that regard. And you might be saying, this is kind of like head trash, but you might say, oh, well, I couldn't write that book. I couldn't give that speech from stage. It's already been done before. Like, who would ever listen to me? In one respect, there is some truth to that, in that we're all just borrowing from other people. Where the lie is in that is you haven't put your own spin on it. That is a perfectly unique book, a perfectly unique speech from stage, because there are universal truths. That's what we're borrowing. We're borrowing truth.
Right.
We're not borrowing stories. We're not borrowing experience. That's what I would say to the person who's basically on day one of the entrepreneurial journey. Think about who you once were. Think about the person that you are best suited to serve and start there.
That is a great step one. I think that makes it so easy to identify.
And you feel with them. Like, you have literally been in those shoes. So if they are feeling doubt or confused or afraid or whatever, is like, duh, that's how I felt 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, I was there.
I would ask you, Bob, who are you helping? Who are you serving?
In terms of my personal brand, I'm a Christian. It's absolutely a part of my brand DNA. It's a part of my spiritual DNA. Like, it is who I am. I just recently came out with a book. It's a Christian nonfiction book where I basically tell the Bible through movies. The Dark Knight, The Hunger Games, Saving Private Ryan. I help the reader to understand why he or she enjoys those movies. I've always loved stories, and I always thought I loved God. Like, I was around the church. I went to Christian schools growing up, things like that, but it was just kind of a box that I checked. And so the reason I wrote this book a couple of years ago, I made that connection where the reason why I like Saving Private Ryan, the reason why I think it's good and right and true to see the wicked punished, to see the hero get the girl, to see paradise restored, is because that's what I want as a human. If we have a creator, a master creator, God, who has written that story on our hearts, it makes sense why we can roll out all these different copycats and not get tired of it. It's why we can have Star Wars and The Matrix and Avatar and over and over and over. It's the same story. It's the hero, it's the villain, the love interest, like it's all there. I am serving the person who hasn't yet made that connection, who is doubting in God's goodness and doubting God's reality, like whether or not he exists. I'm helping that person because that's the person that I once was, to understand, like, hey, this might be why you like The Matrix. It is the story of the Bible. Like, Neo is Jesus, tail the tape. It is the same person. That's interesting. Let's unpack this a little more.
This is really interesting. Now I wish we had a second podcast to talk about this, because I read a lot of development books, like self-improvement, personal development, mindset. And just by happenstance, I was in a particular section of the Bible reading one day, and I was reading this self-improvement book, and almost verbatim, the advice given in the self-improvement book was coming word for word out of scripture. And it dawned on me, my brain almost exploded. I was like, holy crap. I started to see the parallels between all of these development books I've been reading. And I thought, this is just scripture. This is just the Bible retold. And then I started to think, like, I wonder how many people have made this connection of correlation, because there's a ton of people who read these development books as a religion. They don't go to church. They don't believe in God, but they believe these personal development books as if it is a God, as if it is a religion. And I thought to myself, how ironic is that the root of this message really is the Bible?
Well, Paul, the Apostle Paul, actually foretold of that, saying in the last days, specifically the Gentiles, I think about like Western society, he was saying that eventually people will just continue to learn and learn and learn and never come to the knowledge of the truth. That's what we do now. Like, look at the endless podcasts and seminars and masterminds and books, and we are constantly learning. We have a creator. This universe is not on accident. Like, we have a creator. He wants to know us. He wants us to know him. You're not going to find that in a self-help book that is purely secular. Like, the power is within you. The answer is within you. Live your best life now. But what if there's more? If there is more, if what the Bible says is true, you are by default missing it. You're constantly learning and never coming to the knowledge of the truth. As a self-help junkie myself, I'm in that business. I'm in that business, but we can't miss the main thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I want to end on one final question. I've heard you proclaim that we need to stop thinking of ourselves as the main character and see ourselves really as more of a supporting role. And I'd love if you just kind of expanded on that.
In my book, the name of the book is called Our Heart's Desire, How Our Stories Reveal the Thing We Want Most. In the front section of the book, I walk you through the characters of a story, the author, the hero, the love interest, and the enemy. That's of your typical love story, biblical-based journey. When it comes to the hero of a story, that's the main character. It's the protagonist. And when we say hero, you might think Batman, Superman, like it's specifically a male character, but it doesn't have to be. Like Katniss Everdeen is the hero of the Hunger Games. When we think about our story, like our lives, one mistake that we fall into is we think we're the main character of our story. And that'd be easy to do because I was born in one body. This is how I experience life. Also, you have all of these messages, whether it's as an American, as an athlete, as a man. It's like, this is your life. This is your career. First one in, last one out. It's your glory. And as a Christian, when I read scripture, like you just don't see that. It is not in there. It's actually the opposite. Jesus called John the Baptist, who is his cousin, said he's the greatest man that ever lived. And John the Baptist said, I must decrease that Jesus might increase. Like Jesus said, this is the greatest man who ever lived. And that man said, yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall. Just going back to the hero of the story, the minor characters, the supporting characters. One thing that Jesus said, which I had never understood what this verse meant until I saw it through the paradigm of a story. Jesus says, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. That doesn't mean that you have to become a martyr. It doesn't mean you have to be killed, like whoever loses his life. No. What he's saying is until you surrender, until you give up your life for my sake, you will not find it. It's only once you surrender and say, yeah, I'm not the hero. I'm a supporting character. It's only once you do that, that life starts making sense. Again, it's kind of like the backwards kingdom of God. It's so often that way. It's like by giving, you receive. By decreasing, you increase. Until you become the supporting character of your own story, your story does not make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. This is real. It's hard to explain something that's intangible that you and I both have experienced and felt. When your focus is moved from yourself to kingdom expansion, it's incredible the things that come into your life to facilitate that.
100%. I totally agree.
Bob, it has been an absolute pleasure having you today. I feel like we could probably do 3 more episodes back to back right now. I appreciate your time today. How can our audience get in touch with you?
Yeah, like I said, we at Brand Builders, we actually offer a free 60-minute coaching call. If you're interested in this, if you guys want to work through your brand DNA with me, stuff like that, I'd love to talk to you. No pressure. All you have to do is just go to freebrandcall.com/BW, like Bob Wheatley, freebrandcall.com/BW. And as far as my book, it's available on Amazon. Again, Our Heart's Desire. This has been great, man. I'm glad that you had me on.
It's been awesome. And for everybody listening, everything that you need to find Bob will be below in the show notes. Take a minute, look it over. And if this podcast is helping you, if it's changing your life, it's helping you get to the next level, all I ask is that you pay the small fee, and the small fee is like, share, and subscribe. Just give us some 5 stars. Tell your friends about it. We're on a mission here. We're on a mission to change your life and the world and unlock the freedom that is available and waiting for you. We appreciate you and can't wait to see you next week.